Hello legends, in this video I'm going to be going over the GPT Realtime API. This is now production ready and it has a bunch of new features compared to the previous preview model. So this production ready model has MCP support, it can accept images as input, it can also accept video as input. I think the OpenAI devs are working on that. It has SIP integration, which means you can plug it into internet-based phone calling systems. It's 20% cheaper than the previous model. It's better at following instructions. Also has some new voices, and the voices are more expressive. So there's a bunch of new stuff available for this model that I think is super cool. And to start off this video, I'm just going to show you a very basic browser agent and its ability to actually take photos of either my webcam or take a screenshot of my browser, ingest it into the conversation, have the agent process that image in real time, and then respond about it as well. So I'm first going to show you this capture feature. So let's turn the conversation on. Hi, how you doing?
Hey there, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you? Feeling
Yeah,
pretty good?
I'm doing good as well. Can you let me know what I'm wearing?
Sure thing. It looks like you're wearing a black hoodie with a logo on the chest that says Jula. It's pretty distinct and stands out.
Okay, nice.
Looking,
And how many fingers am I holding up?
I see you're holding up two mirrors, like a peace sign. Looking good.
Okay, thank you. And now I need some help with my maths homework. I got this equation, but I think I answered it incorrectly.
Sure, I can definitely help. I see the equation you wrote. It looks like you have 1 plus 1 equals 3 there. That's a little off. The correct answer for 1 plus 1 is actually 2. Let's fix that together.
Nice, thank you very much. Okay, so that was a really cool demo of just showing you my webcam. Now, the interesting thing is that you can also deploy this app, what's in the browser. We're using WebRTC as like the structure, the facilitator for this agent interaction. The same way that I deploy it on my browser here for my computer, you can also deploy it for your mobile phone. All right, so let me demo this Replit phone app, which is just that WebRTC, the same framework. It's the same voice agent, but now it's plugged into my phone. So I just gave it permission for my microphone and for my camera. And now let's start the conversation. Hi, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you? Everything going well on your end?
Yes, it's going well. Can you please describe what you see?
Sure. I see you wearing a black hoodie with the word Julka on it. You've got a neatly trimmed beard and dark hair. The background looks like a simple room with a light-colored wall. You look pretty relaxed and comfortable.
Okay, and can you tell me what you see now?
Now, I see a close-up of a keyboard on a desk. The keys have a sleek design, and I can notice some subtle backlighting under the keys. There's also part of a monitor stand visible behind.
Okay, thank you very much for your help. Have a good day. All right, and there you go. That was the WebRTC deployed on a mobile app by using Replit. And now for the second part of this demo, I'm just going to use the browser assistant mode. So I'm just going to refresh this page. I'm going to turn the conversation on and then start sharing my browser for an X post. Okay, so let's do that. Hey, how you doing?
Hey there, I'm doing great. I'm really glad to
Nice.
hear that.
Hey, can you take this screen and can you let me know what you see?
Sure thing. Let me take a look at the screen and describe what I see. Give me just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So, what I'm seeing is a social media post. It looks like someone named Justin Uberti is replying to a question about whether the Realtime API or WebRTC interface supports video input. Justin confirms that it does, and mentions
Okay, nice.
you need to add a specific
Now,
thread.
I've got another question for you. Can you take this screen and let me know what you see?
Of course. From what I can see, there's a social media post. It's a response to a question about real-time video input tech. The original post mentions that the real-time API
Okay,
or
sorry.
WebRTC interface
Can you please take this screen and show me what you see?
All right, I see an image that looks like a stock market chart or a financial graph with a red line trending upward. There are small figurines of people standing on it, almost like they're walking along the graph. The text mentions
Okay, thank you.
season.
Okay, so what we just saw was that I didn't have to click any buttons, but I was able to send these images into the conversation. So for the first demo with this capture button, I actually manually pressed the button and I was able to send this image automatically into the conversation. I'm not sure if you saw before, but every time I did that, there was this little tag here saying image sent. Now for this browser assistant, the same thing happened. I had to get permission to actually share some of my browser. And I set it up where if I said a certain phrase, the agent, I'd be able to listen to the events and the agent will be able to dynamically actually take that screenshot and then send it into the conversation. So that specific sequence of words was, can you take this screen? Which is why when I said it here, can you take this screen? I was able to transcribe this as part of the actual background code, pick this up, and then manually do that function. So it actually just took the screenshot and sent it into the conversation. And I had that at this, there we go again. Can you take this screen? So I think there was a bit of disruption when I asked it the first time. It kind of just, it didn't take the photo of the screen. And I think that's because my laptop was too loud and was feeding into my mic. But that's essentially how I was able to create a very dynamic experience. Now, because your code, like you have custom code, you can actually just go into the back of here and just say, oh, every 1 second, take a screenshot and then feed it into the system. You got to be mindful that it does consume quite a few tokens when you're doing that, and it might increase the latency just because you're sending a photo every single second. That does have to be processed by the agent in the background. The other thing I've noticed as well is that because we're using WebRTC, there's some limitations around the actual pixels, like the amount of pixels you can send. So the resolution of the screen and the actual details in the image when you send them across, I'm yet to find the sweet spot of how high quality it can be before it kind of just like breaks the API and says, sorry, it's not accepted. So some of these images, the resolution is a little bit low. That's why I was zooming in. But yeah, I'm yet to test what's the biggest image I can send. Now, the cool thing is that in the same way that I was able to use the agent to do some of those browser actions, like take a screenshot, if we come back to this public release information here from OpenAI, we've got a couple of demos over here. So I want to show you this demo by T-Mobile. Let me just reset it, where there's a user speaking to this voice agent, and then the voice agent is going to be changing the elements on a screen. So let me just play that now.
T-Mobile's AI assistant.
Can you compare the camera of my current phone with the Samsung Galaxy S25?
Sure. The Rebel 8 has a 50 megapixel main sensor.
So as you just saw, the user asked a question about a comparison of their phone versus a new model, and then you saw the actual elements on a screen change. So it's very possible for you to build out a very high-level skeleton of a web page, integrate an AI assistant into there, and give it the capacity to actually make changes to the elements on a screen. So let's say that agent had access to all your products and your services, all the features and specs. Well, if a user came onto your application and they were asking questions between differences, you could just have a skeleton of your page and just kind of get the agent to dynamically fill in, this left bar has this right bar has this is the title we're displaying, here's the information from the database for this section, and then really dynamically have these like really cool experiences. So that's possible both for your phone and also for your browser, and that's using something called the WebRTC. So if we actually come across to the Realtime API, the main way that you would build agents is by using the SDK, which is like much easier, much faster to build these agents. A lot of pre-built libraries are packed into this. The three main things that you would have to know are the way that you connect these systems up. So like what's the transport method for the conversation between the two systems? So you have WebRTC, which is one of the easiest ways to set up. And the WebRTC is used for browser-based speech-to-speech voice applications. So if you have a mobile phone application or a web browser like what we just saw, both of those things will be using the WebRTC. WebSockets are good for server-to-server applications. So let's say you have a third-party app that you want to integrate into some real-time experience, then this is where you'd be using the WebSockets. And then finally, you have this SIP integration. So this allows you to connect to different internet-based phone calling systems. So now, since we're on the topic of SIP integrations, I think having an AI voice agent, like a voice caller, will be one of the best use cases for this model. So I want to speak about the three different ways that you can actually deploy a voice agent. So the first way is by using this SIP integration. This is going to be all custom coded. And if you want to take advantage of any of the features of this agent, like tool calling, MCP, web search, file search, so if you want to have like a RAG database attached to your agent, all this kind of stuff, you'll actually have to custom code. Downside is you have to know how to code or code with AI and read these documentation. The upside is you have like ultimate control and like lowest latency, best performance. The second method is actually the SIP is also just for internet calls. If you want to have landline calls, like if you have a phone number for your business and you want your customers to call that phone number and then plug into a real-time agent, you can use something like Twilio. So Twilio will be able to facilitate that conversation for you, that connection between your real-time API and your actual phone number. Same thing here though, when you deploy this, it is custom code. So you have to be able to custom code all your integrations. Now, the third and simplest way to actually deploy this voice agent is by using something like Retell AI. So Retell AI is a voice agent platform. And if I just go into this agent over here, this is the configuration panel. So it's very easy to set this up. You just have to input your prompt. Over on the top over here, you have two different options. One is to choose the model or the brain of your system. I've already got it chosen for the real-time API, which is the production-ready one for this video. The previous preview model, the 4.0 real-time, you can also use this, but just note that it's 0.5 cents a minute versus 0.4 cents a minute. So this is, 40 cents a minute versus 50 cents a minute. So it's already 20% cheaper, like we mentioned at the start of this video. But you do have the host of other OpenAI models over here. Going down, you've got Claude and Gemini. And you can also choose different voices. So OpenAI does come with a couple of new voices. If you wanted to use something like the Claude model, you can use some of the 11 Labs voices, the OpenAI voices, or a different third-party provider voice as well. So this is a really easy tool if you're not you don't want to do any coding at all to deploy your real-time voice agent. You just choose it over here. The latency is superb. Like, this system is super quick. What you saw in that browser demo that we looked at over here is incredibly fast. And you get a similar latency if you're using Retell AI. Now, I do want to mention one thing. So they've got a bunch of integrations over here: function calling, RAG knowledge base, real-time transcription, webhooks, MCPs. All these integrations over here are Retell based. So Retell, this platform, has created these integrations in general as infrastructure for their phone callers. So that means I can choose any other model like GPT-5 and still have the MCP support because that's Retell's infrastructure. That's the really cool thing here. Now, the downside is that the upside is it's super easy to set up, but the downside is that you might increase the latency. You might have a little bit lower performance just because you're using Retell's infrastructure. But obviously, it's much easier, much simpler to set up and maintain if you don't know how to code. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. Now, WebSockets, I'm not going to speak about too much. WebRTC is the very interesting thing. So yeah, basically, this is just a protocol for the communication between the browser and your agent. This is a very simple way to set your agents up. The one thing that we need to use when we're doing this specific framework is we need to generate an ephemeral token. So interestingly, the person that we saw before in this X post over here, this guy, Justin Uberti, he actually is the creator of WebRTC. So that's very interesting. So the ephemeral token is essentially a way that you authenticate your conversation with the agent. Since you don't want to be exposing your API key within the browser, this is like a bit of a security system over here. I'm not going to be speaking too much about the complexities of actually setting up these callers, but I will very quickly jump across a few key sections just to give you the highlights of the system. So the first place I want to look at is this managing conversations. So the documentation in general is, I think, slightly outdated. This model was just released like a day ago, so I think the OpenAI team will be rolling out some changes into this documentation. For example, when I was first building out my actual app, the one that I demoed to you guys, the only place that included the documentation for MCP support, which is this little snippet over here, and also image input support, is this snippet over here. You actually couldn't find this in the developer documentation. I think on GitHub, OpenAI does have examples that you can go to and then get like pre-built apps, like just very simple demo apps that you can go with. But I wasn't really able to find that so simply. So I think across the next weeks and a couple of months that the documentation will be rolled out, things will be a lot simpler. So that's just one thing to note here. So looking at the real-time conversation explanation over here, one of the main things that you have to know is that every time you start a conversation with an agent, you have to build this session object, and then this is how you initiate a conversation. This includes your things like the prompt for the conversation, any variables that you want to bring in, the actual audio input and output formats. So for example, if you're using something like Twilio, they've got a very specific format for audio, which might be actually this already. And yeah, this is basically where you configure your system to not only marry up to your other system that you're using, like a third-party app or whatever you're expecting to work, but you also give the instructions for the conversation. So one thing that I had to do, which I remember from the first video I did about real-time callers, was in order for my events as the user to actually be where I can actually access them as events and get my transcript as events when I'm running my conversation, I actually had to go across to my code. And in my session object, this is where you define your tool calls. This is where you define your prompt. You also have to define that you want to do transcription. So if you don't do transcription, your events as the user will not be transcribed, but by default, the events of the agent are transcribed. So that's how, when we were having this conversation, I was able to get my messages here in blue and the agent's messages in red. My blue messages are only possible because in my session object, I had please transcribe over there. Now, the interesting thing is that you can actually set your prompt dynamically, and you can set these variables dynamically. You can also change the prompt mid-conversation, but for your session object, if you do want to set it dynamically, for example, if you're building an AI caller system, you can just get the customer, like you have a database of all your customers and their phone numbers. If you get a phone call, you can just take that phone number before you actually open up the WebSocket for a phone call, or before you actually open up a conversation. Go to your database, figure out the customer's name, what products they purchased, the last conversation, bring it as context into your session object, and then you start your conversation, and then your agent has all those dynamic variables, the dynamic data for that specific customer. So that's how you use this section here dynamically with prompts and variables. Going through here, you have some information about how to actually send events into your agent, so into the context of the conversation. So we got import underscore text. We use at some stage import underscore image when we're sending our screenshots. So if we just go to this code into server, or is it in our app.js? Okay, so as one of the events that we're sending through, what we saw over here, very similar to this text, import underscore text. This thing here, this is a similar way that we do the import underscore image. And that's what we're sending over here. So that message that we're sending into the system. So it's really cool because we can send this image first and then also send our audio separately into the conversation and kind of have a double turn at one time. Because typically when you're speaking with ChatGPT, it's like you say something, it says something. You say something, it says something. So in this case, we were able to send both things at one time. Now, just going up a little bit. So I've actually got the settings for how many pixels, like what's the size of the images that we're sending. If the image is too big, I think the latency will be increased. So that's just one thing to note over here. Also, if you're building out your own voice system like this, I'm pretty sure the image sending is only going to work via like the WebRTC. So if you do want to send images into your conversation, I don't think you can do that with, or maybe you can do that with WebSockets. Actually, you might be able to. It just really depends. Like if you're deploying this over SIP or over Twilio, like for phone calls, I don't know that you can. But if you're building out these applications, then you most likely, I think you'll be able to over webhooks as well. But yeah, I've just used WebRTC for this system that I've been building out. So just be mindful of this. The image size is pretty small. You can just experiment with this and just build it up if you do want to. In one of these other ones, 1.1.2, let me just check. So yeah, the Justin guy over here, he actually mentions that you can do video streaming as well. So all you need to do to get video streaming is to just set that variable of video to true. And then you don't actually have to send any video events. It's just on the entire time. Just like the audio is on the entire time, you don't have to send audio packets. You can just leave this to true, and it constantly just streams that video. So I've got one of my codes here as well. One of the apps, one of these versions, does do the video streaming as well. I don't know if I've implemented it correctly because mine's very, very laggy. So maybe it's a configuration setting. Maybe it's just the API has to be updated. But it was somewhere here. But basically, yeah, we just enabled video. Now, the final thing I want to go over very quickly is that I came across Dominique. He's an OpenAI dev. Came across Dominique's LinkedIn post about a demo that he did, very similar to what I did. This is where I got the inspiration from. Start the conversation, send an image, do an MCP call. Actually, in his video, he did an asynchronous MCP call. That's one of the features of this model as well. It means that previously you had to wait for that API call to be completed before the agent would then respond and speak to you. Now it can actually trigger off that API call, that MCP call in the background. You can then you continue the conversation with it, and you can kind of go back a couple of seconds later and say, okay, what was that result? So the conversation is very fluid. Now, as part of this post, he also linked some really useful links. So the developer documentation for the Realtime API, 7 prompting tips, but also this full prompting guide. And this full prompting guide is for the Realtime API. I'm going to link this in the video below. You guys should definitely come into here and read through this. Even if you don't use some of these, like what they're teaching here with their prompting, it's just really cool to see what you can actually do with these models. So very high level stuff. So we have the ideal layout for prompting, role and objective, personality, context, reference, pronunciation. This is really cool. On this page, you'll also find the differences between the production-ready real-time model versus the preview model, the previous one as well. So for example, the model could take on a specific accent. And if we look at the previous preview model.
Salut, comment ça va aujourd'hui?
Okay. And now the actual production-ready model.
Salut mon chum, comment ça va aujourd'hui? Est-ce que je peux t'aider avec quelque chose?
So the production-ready model is meant to be a bit more expressive as well. So let's see here, the previous model.
Welcome, welcome, my friend. Are you ready to play the ultimate guessing game for a chance to win $1 million? Let's dive right in.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome. It's time to play the $1 million number guessing game. Are you ready to take a shot at a life-changing prize? Come.
So yeah, that's much more expressive. That actually is getting closer to like the 11 Labs voices. You have personality and tone settings. You can come into here. There's a section that I want to show you. You can go through all these different bits and pieces. You can see every single feature. Every time they give you a suggestion about how to prompt, they actually compare it to the previous model and the new model. So it's cool that this new model is better and it's cheaper as well. Okay, so you have reference pronunciations. So just going back to Retell, Retell is actually a very good phone calling system because they also give you the ability to do, I think one of the settings here, they have these settings where you can actually change the pronunciation of certain words. Like you can phonetically describe what the word should sound like. And that's one thing that we got over here with the OpenAI prompting. So SQL, say it as SQL, PostgreSQL as Postgres. So it just gives you information on how to say that. So the previous model, the preview model.
SQL, or structured query language, is used for
Okay. And now if you have the actual, the descriptive way of how to pronounce this word with the new model.
No problem. Just let me know what kind of SQL query or issue you're dealing with.
So that's really cool. Once again, Retell has that natively built into its actual AI caller, but we can do that over here. And then we have this next section. So tool call preambles. So tool call preamble just means that when your agent's firing off the tool call, you can actually say like a static or dynamic message to your user to kind of keep the experience a little bit more lifelike. So instead of just saying, okay, I would like just not even saying anything that I'm going to be checking the system now for you. Sometimes the previous preview model would just like not respond, check the system, and then respond after the API call, which is kind of like a very long wait time. This lets you trigger off the API call and send a preamble as well. So in your tool call settings, you also have the ability to say, let me look up information on your account, or I'm going to fetch that information, or one moment while I get your details while the tool call is being called. So this makes it a bit more realistic. Interestingly, if we go across to Retell, and if we go across to functions, let's say we want to add our own brand new custom function, that preamble section was already natively available on Retell. At the very bottom of this tool call setting, I can say speak during execution. And if the execution takes more than 2 seconds, I can dynamically insert a message here, like, let me check that for you. And that snippet of text, like, let me check that for you, thereabouts takes 1 to 2 seconds anyway. So now, as the actual system is placing that tool call, you have this overlaid text. So the total like perceived wait time of the system it's actually pretty much instantaneous. So these preambles are very cool. And there's one final thing that I want to show you guys. And that's this section over here. So we have conversation flow as state machine. So this is using the idea of a JSON structure to manage the state and transitions between different parts of the conversation. So at a high level, you have the conversation states, where the ID of the first state is the greeting. You have a specific goal for the greeting stage. Use the company's name, let them know in an upfront way that you're there to help them. And then you have these, like the transition. So after this first step, once the greeting is complete, go across to step 2. Whereas as part of your greeting, if you're able to get the customer's first name, go straight to step 3. And then you have this JSON structure, the exact same structure all the way through. But obviously each ID is different for a different step. You have a different goal and a different set of instructions for each step. And you can kind of just keep carrying through here. So step 3, get the verified phone information. Here's your goal, here's your instructions, here's your examples, and you keep going through the conversation. So that is actually super cool. And just to go back to Retell as well, so over here, for this specific agent, we just have one prompt that we can put in, like a static prompt for, let's say, simpler callers. Or you also have the ability to build these conversation flow agents. So the conversation flow agent is basically like a flowchart or a conditional pathway where you have like this specific block's responsible for getting the customer's name. If you can get the customer's name, take this route. If you have the name, take this route if you don't have the name. And it's kind of conditional logic approach to actually going sequentially through the conversation or through the process for the phone call. Obviously leads to higher accuracy, but this is super cool. It was natively built into Retell already. So yeah, I would definitely go into this page. I would go through this entire like cookbook for the prompting as well. It's going to have a bunch of really cool information for escalations. Also, how we spoke about before, when you're able to transcribe what the user is saying, they've got really cool functionality around picking up what the user is saying or what the actual agent is saying, firing off like sub functions from, keyword searches from these responses, really elaborate ways to actually build out very sophisticated and high quality systems. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to get access to the web app from my computer demonstration or the one that I deployed on Replit for my phone, I'm going to have those resources available in my school community. If you want to have more of a discussion about how to build out a more sophisticated system, come down and have a conversation there as well. All right, see you in the next one.